You're watching the PoliticIt podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. We've got Laura Warburton with us, and so nice to have you. We kind of touched base quite a while ago. You were working on some campaigns before I was even thought about being in politics. So it's nice to have you in, and so let's talk a little bit about you, because I know a lot of our audience may not even know who you are. So let's start there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you went to school?
Well, first of all, it's nice to be here.
Oh, thank you.
And I thoroughly enjoy sitting with you and talking with you. And I'm very grateful that you're my senator.
Oh.
So that's nice. Okay, so me. Please don't hold this against me. I'm from California, was raised. I've lived here longer than I lived in California. I was born a Republican in the San Francisco Bay Area. Don't have any idea how that happened, but I'm very conservative and always have been. Cleon Skousen, when I first met him, when I was 18, became my mentor.
Interesting.
Yes. Matter of fact, this afternoon I was listening to one of his podcasts from years and years ago, and I teared up because I miss him. I miss that type of conservatism, that beauty of soul that he has. So
I was kind of glad when Glenn Beck kind of reintroduced him.
Oh,
right.
You know, my kids don't know him. I have all his books. I've got many of his papers. I will forever be grateful to him. So I am LDS now. Was not raised LDS. I joined the LDS church when I was 18. I was in California at the time. Moved here. I moved to Idaho. Left Idaho. Went on a mission. I barely.
Where'd you go?
I went to North Carolina, to Charlotte.
Oh.
I barely graduated from high school. I was extremely bored in high school and ended up going to a private high school that was accelerated. And so that was wonderful. And to this day, I still listen to all my books at 1.5. I can't tolerate the one speed. So when I listen to this
So your mind works faster.
Oh my goodness, it does. It's not always accurate, but it does move fast. Sometimes I have to slow it down. And as I do that, I'll say I have horses. I live up on 5 beautiful acres up in Ogden Valley. How did I get involved in politics?
Yeah.
That story. It's a fun story. So, in 2010, I decided that it was time to get involved. From 2001, I had lived in Layton, and I had become state delegate several times. But when I moved to Ogden Valley, I decided to sit back for just a little bit and take a breather and, get my surroundings. And then I got involved in county politics and party politics. That was the first time I was really involved with that. And let's just step back for a minute. The first time I became a state delegate, I made myself promise that I would make people first, politics second. That the minute I started hating people, that I was done.
Don't you think we need more of that?
Yeah.
In politics, we've gone to a point where that's out of style for some reason.
Yeah, well, we get called all kinds of fun names, right? And so I call myself a compassionate conservative. I care about the people, but I don't want you to pay for it, right? If I need money, I'm going to come to you personally and ask you for money. I'm not going to ask the state.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at it. So at that time, Representative Gage Frower was in office, and we had these issues up at Powder Mountain, which we always have issues in Ogden Valley. Anyway, I threatened him.
Gage is now a county commissioner.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Commissioner Frower. I threatened him, and I said, and I had been writing some pieces for the Standard Examiner, and I said, I'm going to write an op-ed if you do what you say you're going to do. So, in the meantime, another person took me aside and said, Laura, you need to find out the facts. Now that sounds mean. I get that sounds mean, but there's a difference between owning the truth, stating the truth, and calling somebody names and not letting other people have views. So at one point, in some of the issues that were going on in the county, then Representative Frower asked me if I would go and speak to some of his people. Sometimes there's big words for me, so you have to be patient. So,
some of his constituents.
thank you. I'm a little nervous. What can I say? No. So I did, and after I had studied the issue of what I was going to talk to these people about, it was something that we were all going to vote on, and I had studied it back and forward, and I had looked at all the people that were behind it. I had studied them and see what their agendas were, their secret agendas or hidden agendas. And I felt really confident that I knew what was happening. And I spent 3 hours with these people. And by the end of I was giving them all these facts. And they just said, well, we just disagree with you. And I went, what? How can you disagree with all the facts? I don't understand that. And so I went back and I made a phone call. I'll call him Gage, because he always tells me to call him Gage, but I'm very respectful. But I called Gage and I said, how much do you make doing this? And he told me $6,500 a year. And I said, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you put up with all of this. I said, he goes, matter of fact, Laura, I'll lose money when I go to the session. Well, and even though I am...
Yeah, people don't realize that.
No. And I even said, I need to confirm, so tell me who I can call. So I called Sandy Teeny, who was then head of the House, the administrative part. Beautiful, beautiful woman, taught me so much. So I called her, I said, tell me this isn't true. And she goes, oh no, it's true. It can be up to $15,000, but you have to justify where you live, like if you have to come down, and then of course leadership gets more. And I was dumbfounded. And then I had a secret. I am Cleon Skousen's. I was mentored by literally at his knees and his wife.
Wow.
And so, but I was the ultimate armchair politician. I really thought I knew everything. And in that moment, I realized I knew nothing. So I asked my husband what he would think about me just offering my help to Representative Frower.
Oh, interesting.
And so I called, and he said yes, and I felt inspired. And so I called him, and I said, what would you think about this? And he said, I would love that. I went, really? Now, I had no idea about interns. That's how little I knew. I didn't know he was going to have an intern. I didn't know that I was the oldest intern on the Hill, and I wasn't...
But you were his intern, or just you were the volunteer? Okay.
I was an admin. Back then, we could have badges as admins. I would go on the floor. I would clean his desk. I'm a big organizer, right? Uh-huh. And so all you smart people generally are not as organized as me. And so I'm organizing the desk, cleaning it off, making sure.
I'm the worst. I'm the worst organizer.
That's well to see. You need someone like me. So I know my place. So anyway, that year I was not kept out of one meeting. I was in every caucus, every private meeting. That's where I learned. I met Mike Ostermiller and sat in with. That's where I learned that lobbyists are just experts with agendas, and that they weren't these evil, mean people. I actually ran a bill. I was on the planning commission at the time for Weber County, and I saw a problem with these youth homes and tried to walk in and change that. And we did. The bill passed, although it didn't do anything. But that was my first experience of the legislature, and I fell in love. And so I did it the next year, and the next year. And then pretty soon I wasn't just doing it for him, but I was doing my own thing. So I became a very successful, influential citizen lobbyist. And I loved it. And I loved everybody up there. I loved the community. I respected them. I knew my place. I knew I didn't have a vote on the floor. I knew that. And I knew that I needed to be respectful.
But you had a voice, though. That's the important part, right?
It was.
And people don't realize that anybody that walks in there can have a voice. They just need to learn how to have that voice.
I just redistributed this, but I used to teach classes to groups that wanted to hear. And my very first statement is, you bring a handshake, not a hammer. And that's how it has to be done. But there are hammers everywhere right now, and it's hard. It's hard to watch. So that's how I got involved in politics. which really kind of leads me into what happened with my daughter.
Yeah.
Would you like?
Let's wait just a second. We'll take a break and then we'll come back to that because I think that's the thing that I really want to hear about.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We're here with Laura Warburton. Right before the break, we started talking about, your shift kind of in these things that occurred with your daughter and the things that you've done since that. So let's talk about that. Why don't you tell that story?
Okay, first let me just go back and say that at the same time I was on the SCC, so the State Central Committee for the GOP.
Right.
I was also Leg 8 chair, and that's how I built a lot of the relationships. I would show up to the meetings, I would support. So in that year, I did that. The next year, I ran a bill called parental notification. And that required, it was a simple bill. My two sons were greatly bullied, and so was my daughter. And so all it required was school to notify parents of both the bullied and the bullier if this was going on. So I wanted parents to be involved. It was very important to me. My kids got to testify, and my daughter got to be up there and testify. I've always been really good.
Who ran that bill?
Gage.
Gage, yeah.
Of course,
Okay.
yeah. And so, and there was a couple other bills at the same time. But that was the biggest one that year. And so everyone knew Hannah. Hannah was also vice chair of the Young Republicans.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was 2012, that session. And that was when Thomas Wright was chair of the GOP. And we all went down to Vegas to knock on doors for the nominee. And we did our part, and everybody knew. Now, behind the scenes, what I didn't know was happening was that then AG Sean Reyes had gone to the then Governor Herbert and said, we need to talk about suicide. And of course, Governor Herbert said what most people would say, it's too sensitive, we can't do that. And I later learned that Sean said, but it's the #1 cause of death in Utah for kids aged 10 to 24, which it still is.
Yeah.
So that year, the next year, I ran the next bill, which was the high-CBD bill. And it was the first one in the country of its kind. I wasn't running THC, I wasn't running full cannabis. I was running high-CBD with THC in it. It wasn't a hemp bill, but we also piggybacked the farm bill that year that allowed hemp to be done within the state through the colleges and the bureaus. So we did that. It was a huge bill. It was, I drew in controversy from all over the country. And first time I ever got mad at somebody, big bill. At the same time, my daughter was really struggling. She'd gotten in a car accident and her brain wasn't healing. And she'd been diagnosed with post-concussive syndrome. So she had a traumatic head injury in this wreck. It was not traumatic. It was just what happened was she got in an accident, went to the hospital. We took her to the hospital. The hospital said, no, she's fine. She had a headache, really severe headache all weekend. So Monday I took her back and I said, you will give her an MRI now. And then the local hospital said, yep, she has a brain bleed that has self-resolved. So traumatic, TBI, not according to some people, it was concussion. But what we found out about her later made us realize that she had many concussions from the time she was born, and we didn't realize it. And the bill that we ran through, the CBD bill, was actually I didn't get paid. Again, I did it voluntarily. Gage ran it, but I did it through the Utah Epilepsy Association. And so I became very familiar with epilepsy and seizure disorders, which I later found out that Hannah had been having all her life. She had drop seizures. We didn't know it. So we had taken her in because she had little seizures, but not big ones. So that year, in June, after that session in 2014, Hannah couldn't take the pain anymore. We had her in therapy. We had her on medication. She stopped the medication on her own, which big regret there. And she killed herself. She ended her pain. Well, she became the story. And having all these great relationships through everybody, and everyone knew me and everyone knew Hannah. Hannah had testified at the first 3-digit number that was refused because of then Mayor McAdams, which forced everything into SafeUT, or a 3-digit number here, something, and we just couldn't get it, so we had to go the SafeUT route, which also was the impetus to 988 that I helped pass as well. A lot of people, and there's never one person, but something flipped on this, and I became the story instead of having other people be the story and being the puppet master behind the scenes. I became the story. So Hannah became the cause. She became the reason why we passed a bill in 2015 with Justin Fossen, who had just taken office, that we came to your house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful living room that we sat in.
Huh.
We changed a lot of things that year. We changed that. My question is always about facts. If it was the number one cause of death, then why isn't it required? And I'm not big on mandates.
Right.
But we mandated many like behavioral health therapists, or school counselors, and anybody that had anything to do with any kids, that they had to take at least 2 hours. I mean, that's nothing. 2 hours of suicide prevention. Two. I teach that. I am now a master trainer with that, evidence-based. Okay, so we did that year. We did SafeUT that year. It almost didn't pass, and it passed because I handed the story out. I handed the plea out to every single senator and talked with every single one of them. And many of them at that time had personal stories that they had never shared.
I think many people in general have personal stories that they don't share.
That's right. So I decided to mourn out loud for that very reason. So I became the voice. I changed the way we talk about suicide in Utah. So I did. And I did it because I realized Hannah didn't do what I lectured her on. She did what I did. So she hid her feelings. She helped other people all the time. She was the one everyone went to. She was a straight A student. At her viewing, she was given a black belt because she deserved it. Her senseis would never have done that unless she really truly deserved it, but I stopped her from practicing because of her concussion. She couldn't go to school. There was many things she couldn't do because she just couldn't think anymore. Straight A student, she was miserable. And she was 16. She didn't know any better. She didn't. And so there were other bills we passed, like, for example, the sheriff, right? I had helped the sheriff get elected, and I loved him, and it was Terry Thompson at the time. And I have a plaque in my house that his wife gave to me. And he was one of the very first people in our house after Hannah died, after we got back from the hospital. I love that man. I love first responders. I hold them in such high esteem. And yet, when they did their study, when they did their review, when they did their investigation, which is required of unintended death, they didn't even get any of the facts correct. And so if those were the facts that were taken back to the state and given to the state to study so that we could find a solution for suicide, I realized we were way off track. So I went to then, everyone is gone.
Right.
It seems like people are gone.
Yeah.
But Kim Myers, at that time, had been newly appointed to a newly appointed office of suicide prevention at the state. And I said, what do we do to make this right? How do we get correct facts? And she said, well, in another state, what they do, and she gave me the idea of creating an office inside the ME's office for a psychologist, a PhD, to do forensic autopsies. Now that's great. So I started talking to my friends at the legislature, and it wasn't moving, and it wasn't moving, and it wasn't moving. And it wasn't until 5 years later that Representative Bramble, who had every reason to be mad at me, I love that man. I adore that man. I fear that man slightly. So, but he is a wonderful man. And Representative Elison ran that bill that put Michael Staley in that position.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this SafeUT for a second, because I want people to understand what that really is. You know, what exactly does SafeUT do?
So SafeUT, so it's ran by our AG's office.
Okay.
It still is, in cooperation with now, Huntsman Mental Health Institute, HMH.
I thought that was actually a good transitional thing, right? To put that there. But so what is it?
What it is, it's an app. Okay. And it's an app that bypasses the 1-800 number. That was the 1-800 number. And the reason for that is because kids don't call, they don't want to talk, they want to chat. And they don't want to text and wait for someone to call them back. That's as bad as calling a 1-800 number and getting press 1 for this or press 2 for this. No, I want to kill myself right now. I need to talk to somebody. Okay, so the chat app connects you to a behavioral health therapist that's a master's degree level, period. They have their working orders. Their working orders are to, if a child comes in or a child calls, that once they stabilize them and they can figure out what's going on, and it's evolved, okay? So this is in the beginning, okay? Because there's so many more things that are happening now. But this is the basics. This has not gone away. It is private, unless there's an imminent risk of death, and then they try to get the parents on the phone. Okay, and we'll talk about that transition in just a moment. Okay. So if that doesn't happen, they have ways to contact the school, contact somebody, anybody they can. Now it's MCOT teams. They can send them to homes, right? I mean, there's all kinds of outreach that is happening. We do not want our children to die. And in the last 5 years, our numbers for children have gone down 27%. Because of this. Yes, we are saving lives. The rest of the country is stabilized and going up, and we're going down.
That's wonderful.
That is wonderful. That's amazing. And it's because of SafeUT. So in the beginning, I was actually appointed by the AG's office to sit on the commission. And so we implemented, and it was a rough year. I mean, that for me, that was a year that I found out I had hydrocephalus. So I had my own brain issues. I had to have 2 brain surgeries that year. And so about 3/4 of the way of my term, I stepped aside because I realized that I could barely function. So I think part of that was grief too. I mean, this was just a year after my daughter died. And even though I think I grieved extremely well, grief kicks your butt.
Yeah.
It really does. And so I knew I needed to take some time to step back. And so back then we had to set it up to where all the schools had to be able to get phone calls. They had to be able to call us. It was also a tip line. I used to teach.
So the tip line is that another student can observe
Yes.
somebody and say, you know what, I'm worried
Yes.
about them.
Oh my gosh, let's get Hope Squad on here. So I'd rather have an angry friend than a dead friend. That's how it works. I'd rather have, but it's anonymous. So I used to teach, there was a guy here in the sheriff's office, beautiful man, and we would go and teach to any organization that we could, QPR, question, persuade, and refer. And he told me one time, I got all the inside scoop because he was a sheriff, deputy, and he told me that they had, on tip, gone to a boy's home because he had told his friend he was going to shoot the school, and this is in Weber County. And of course, I can't give you any names, and I can't do that. So we're just going to have to trust the deputy, and they're going to have to trust me for just a moment. They went to the house. The parents said, no, our son wouldn't do that. Bless their hearts. They went in anyway, and they found a whole chest full of ready-to-go rifles, guns, everything. So then my friend said to me, we said, we need to take your son into the hospital. No, he's fine. They did it anyway, because that's where he needed to be. Parents take their kids' lives so personally. You know, it's my fault that this is happening. And part of that is good. But what that does is sometimes put blinders on us. And we may be the best parents. We might live in a really nice neighborhood. This happened in North Ogden. In North Ogden. Sometimes parents just have blinders on. So the tip line, I've even had my relatives call. Now I am an open book.
Now that tip line can be on the phone or it can be through the SafeUT app. Is that the way it works?
Well, yes. Okay, so the app goes on your phone and it's free. Okay, the app is also on a computer that you can access through safeut.org. Okay, and
keep going.
What you can do is you can go to either or. I would recommend to all parents go to safeut.org and just start exploring, because there's a lot there for parents. There's a lot there for you to understand. I'm also going to direct people later to my website because there's a lot of good information.
So tell me about that website.
You want to go into Live Hannah's Hope?
Yeah, let's just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so after I lost Hannah, a lot of people approached me and said, you need to do something. Well, doing something meant staying alive for me at that point. But somehow things got pushed in, and so I've had a nonprofit called livehannahshope.org. And it's spelled just like it sounds, with 2 H's though, with Hannah, livehannahshope.org. And primarily what I wanted it to be a central station for resources, because I found it so difficult to
find things, right?
I did. And so I've actually written things. I have actual resources. I have people using my website on a regular basis. It's just easy for me, rather than answering the question 1,000 times, I can just say, here's a link, go read this, and let's talk afterwards. I do that all the time. I've done it 4 times this week. So it's been 10 years. And the other thing that we do is we do the Resilience Award, which you've supported in the past.
Yeah.
And so that's a $500 award, a cash award given to kids that show their resilience in Utah as a senior and graduate anyway. So let's talk a little bit more now about parents. I am thrilled that there are so many good parents out there. These are all public.
Okay.
Okay, so what happens is these kids write their story of resilience, and I put it on the website.
So you can find these at livehannahshope.com.
Yeah,
.org.
.org, yes, right. Live Hannah's Hope. So what was Hannah's hope? She wanted to live without the pain that she had. She wanted to live in joy. She wanted to live in hope. So that's why we call it Live Hannah's Hope. Plus her online name was Live Urban Joy.
Oh,
so
interesting.
So we just took that. But I want to tell you about Taylor. Her mom's a drug addict, not in the picture. She's a senior. Her father's in prison. Should Taylor not call? Should she not have SafeUT on her app, on her phone? Should she? Should she be allowed to have that? I think so.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Maya. She's had 4 suicide attempts. I want Maya to be able to call SafeUT. She's still alive. Why? She used the app.
And these are all people that have won this award.
Yes, this year,
Okay.
4. Now, I had 50 applications. It goes through the USOE and it goes through listserv. So anybody can apply. It just depends on how much money I get from donations, how many people I can give them to. Okay, let's talk about Mia Sia. Her father called her and said, "Don't come home. Just go stay with your friend tonight." She felt uncomfortable with that, so she took her friend and went to a house. Guess what she found? A father that had killed her mother and then killed himself. Should she be allowed to use SafeUT? Not everybody has great parents. I'm a good parent. I'm a good parent. My daughter didn't want to disappoint me. She made one last phone call before she ended her own life. And that was up to the local hospital where her therapist was, who couldn't take the call. I have since learned that at this hospital, very few people even have SafeUT or have training in QPR. Very few. I had a girl that was a...
And that's the great thing about this app is
Yes.
that if they have this app, they get on there, they contact
Yes.
someone, and
Yes.
they pick up the phone.
Yeah.
They pick up the...
They pick it up right away. Right away. This little girl raped 4 times. And all these kids, and I have so many more stories. Go on Live Hannah's Hope and read them. But these kids go on to graduate. And my point is, I hope SafeUT is here forever. All the information is private. All of it's kept here. There's no sharing of that information. It might be aggregated in order for us to look at things and make things better, but that's it. So here's something beautiful. I'm back. I'm back.
Well, you know,
Do you want me to tell you
that's
why I'm back?
that's resilience
Yes.
right there.
Yes. Yes. So
You should get your own award.
I do in so many ways. So here's what's beautiful. I can't be on the commission again. I've been kind of begging to be on the commission again, but I can't because there's only so many seats and they're filled by amazing, wonderful, perfect people.
Right.
However, I really care about parental rights. So I asked U of U, HMHI, if it was time to start an advisory council underneath SafeUT. It's done.
Oh, that's cool.
And I have an application that we can put up on the website, hopefully.
Yeah.
And people can apply.
Well, in fact, you know, as this podcast gets published, we'll actually have a story on there about it.
Okay,
and
good.
any of those details that you want, we'll put in there, and people can just follow the links. We'll put the links in the thing.
Perfect, because parents matter. And just to be very, very transparent, I was given something to look at that was going to go up in elementary schools. Now I know that's disheartening and that's frightening, but it's necessary. However, there was nothing on there for parents, no QR code for a parent. And I said, we can't do this. And then I was thanked and it was changed. So I do care about parental rights. I'm a homeschooler.
Yeah.
I pass bills. I take my parental rights very seriously.
Yeah.
So
Well, we're about out of time.
Okay.
Why don't you just give us a final thought, okay, of what people at home can do to help with this.
Oh,
This is an important problem.
it is. Follow me on Facebook. And I'm an old-fashioned, old person, so Facebook is the way. But it's the
Yeah, my
parents.
kids told me Facebook's for old people. So
Yeah. So we fit perfect, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's where I find people. Don't ever be afraid to call me. Don't ever be afraid to reach out. Put SafeUT on your phones. Call me. Let's schedule an appointment.
Make sure your kids have that on their phone.
Yes, make sure that your kids have that on your phone. Keep talking to your kids. Let them know that they're not a burden. If they're struggling, I have this one mom right now, and she is faithful. Oh my gosh, she's beautiful, has a daughter that won't come out of her room. And that daughter feels like a burden. She's 14. And my advice to her was tell her that you love her anyway. It's okay. It's okay if you don't come out. But in speaking with her, she's very honest that this daughter is a pain in her butt, right?
Yeah.
What we think about our kids matters, and our kids pick up on that. She won't go to therapy, she won't do anything, but I'm supporting the mom. I support moms. That's what I do. I do it on a regular basis. And even after, if I don't have a chance to meet you before, and you lose a child to suicide, I'm here. I'm here for you. Absolutely. And I get how dangerous it is to put up a number on. It's okay. I block people all the time. It's okay. So donate. Donate to Live Hannah's Hope. Donate to SafeUT. Support SafeUT. Maybe I should get a group together. I don't know.
Well, you know what? We really appreciate you coming on, and I just want to say I think the work that you've done is very important. SafeUT has saved life, and I really wanted people to be more aware of it, and so we'll have resources on below the podcast. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for doing this. We probably just saved a life.
Yeah.
We saved a life. I'll bet you we did.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next week.